I think if it were up to Dave Canales, Jalen Coker is your wide receiver 2. It's in a runaway. Xavier Legette's going to get grandfathered in week 1. He'll probably get more snaps than Coker, but it's because of the politics. Nothing on the field so far has justified Legette being the wide receiver 2. None of the reports. Again, Panthers.com literally publishing an article today, play of the day. Jalen Coker keeps creating highlights. And the reports just go on and on. We're going to go to Canales, what he had to say about the 2024 undrafted free agent Jalen Coker, who has been balling like a Sepberg on the practice field during the preseason matchup against Cleveland, killing it. We all know what happened to Legette last Friday night, and I don't think anyone should be holding it against him. I think he caught a bad break. Rayshon Jenkins, for gosh knows what reason. That guy's like Uncle Drew out there. Veteran safety. I believe he's been in the league like 9 years. Grabbing the face mask. Legette said he wasn't talking smack, but being egregious with the second-year wideout, provoking him to ultimately, in Joe Person's words, Xavier Legette put his boxing training from the offseason to use as he punched the Browns safety. None of that is what I'm talking about here. None of that is at play. It's simply the performance on the field. And you cannot hide the fact that Coker, every opportunity he gets, it's highlights. He goes in the game for Legette within seconds. It's a touchdown. He had the jump ball that got called back. And everything that the Panthers wanted Legette to do when they drafted him, specifically catching the ball, which is obvious, but high pointing, contested catches, heck, even when he has the ball in his hand underneath, Coker has been killing it. And there are no sacred cows. I think ultimately Dave Canales reports to Dan Morgan and this front office, and there's a lot of people in there who are relying on Legette taking the next step. And I think Canales, in many ways, he's subservient to Dad. Dad is Dan Morgan. And I think if it were up to Canales, he'd have Jalen Coker in over Legette right now. Wide receiver 2 Legette. It'd be Renfro and Thielen in the slot, battling. Jimmy Horn, I think, is grandfathered in, but naturally is going to be on the field because there's no one else who can play his role. And then obviously T-Mac, wide receiver 1. I don't think Dan Morgan, I don't think the front office lets that happen. Because how is Dad, Dan Morgan, supposed to go to Mom, David Tepper, and say, yeah, our son Dave is not playing the first round wide receiver from a season ago? Dave isn't putting Xavier Legette in the game. And Tepper's like, well, we took Terrace Marshall at 59. In 2023, we took Jonathan Mingo at 39. And then we took this guy, Legette, at 32 in 2024. And there's just a lot of egg on everyone's face. And Canales is sort of just sitting behind the wheel like, ha ha ha, the better guy is in. He's the only one. And obviously we benefit from that if Coker truly is the better player. And I think at this point he is. But he's not going to do it because this is a political game, because there are people who are heavily involved in this decision-making. Here's a clip of Canales talking about Jalen Coker. And the specific question he was asked was, will Jalen Coker make the team? Dave, what do you have to say?
Up to now, like, we're going to play the best guys. And the guys that we can count on, the guys that make plays, the guys that make the catch. You know, I had Tracy Smith's dad, Tater Smith. Tater would always say, a receiver is good is when you throw it to him, they catch it. And Jalen has really showed to be one of the more reliable guys that we have, whether it's contested or he's, open in space. He plays strong to the ball, and he had two really amazing plays in a go ball where he went up over JT Broughton and kind of took it, off of his shoulder and finished the play finished on his feet and ran the ball into the end zone. And you keep showing us like that, he's going to be on the field playing.
Dave Canales says, we're going to play the guys that make the catch. There's no tolerance for not catching the ball. Jalen Coker has flashed. Xavier Legette has not. And that is why I think Jalen Coker has taken the step over Legette. The only thing holding Coker back are people in that front office that don't want an undrafted free agent to overthrow a first-round pick from a season ago. It's that simple. It's that simple. I don't know how you don't listen to that quote. He's literally being asked, will Coker make the team? And he's pulling quotes from Tracy Smith's father, who was the quarterback coach in Seattle, blanking on the name, who Canales replaced. So Canales replaced Tracy Smith, who's the special team coordinator in Carolina. Canales replaced his father in Seattle. He had a really good relationship with him. That's why Tracy followed him to Carolina in 2024. He's pulling this quote. You know a receiver is good when you throw it to him and they catch it. Continually says we're going to play the guys that make the catch. And I read that as a veiled shot at Legette, who had issues with the catching. We all know he's good when he has the ball in his hands, but does that happen? Another, what you could read as a veiled shot, was him talking about guys who are falling down on the jump balls. He goes, Coker grabs it and runs. He grabs it and runs. Rebounds it, high points it. It just looks pretty. It's a prettier product. Emphasis on catching the ball. Calls Coker reliable. And the main takeaway is they're going to play the guys that catch it. They're going to play the guys that deserve to be on the field. It's put the Panthers first. That's what this is. I think this is very direct, honestly. Like, I read this as being Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette at the very least are competing for snaps. And the better player, whoever that is, doesn't matter where they were selected, where they picked this guy up, whether it be Hunter Renfrow, who you really just took a waiver on, or Xavier Legette, who you drafted in the first round, or Coker, who you got as an undrafted free agent from Holy Cross. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you're from. If you're good, you play. I think Canales goes home, and I think he gets the call from Dan. He goes, hey, yeah, Tepper was watching. Like, you got to realize we took that guy at 32, so you better not be putting the freaking undrafted free agent in the game. Or we're all going to get canned, and Brant Tillis's super nerds and Panthers Football Focus and ChatGPT are going to take over the team. And that's already happening. It's inevitable, but it just further happens if Jalen Coker masterfully takes Legette's place on the depth chart. You haven't heard this buzz with Legette yet. And I said it last week. I go, the worst thing he could have done was that fight. And I'm not, if I were him, like Rayshon Jenkins was being downright disrespectful. So a lot of it in life is just bad timing and circumstance. Some people might blame Legette for throwing the punches. I think certainly some of that is at play. Like, dude, you're not Cam Newton. If Cam Newton did this in a preseason game, people would be laughing. People would literally, in Charlotte at BOA, bowing to Cam Newton if he punched a guy like Xavier Legette. Seriously, I thought about that today. The only reason this is really bad for Legette is because Legette is a disappointment, rather. He's not a 1,000-yard wide receiver. He hasn't lived up to the first-round draft status yet. He should be grinding in silence. Disappointing rookie year, grind in silence, not standing in front of the spotlight, going viral in the Glorilla video. And now, better yet, punching Rayshon Jenkins. It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. But I think Coker has an edge early on. And I found this quote hilarious from Dave Canales. I don't have this one clipped, but Dave Canales talking about Jimmy Horn. He calls Jimmy Horn a young David Moore, referring to his grit and effort. And this aligns with Brad Idzik's quote today, talking about how the wide receiver room is a big competition. A little bit juxtaposed from what you just heard from Canales. Idzik seems to think it's a big competition. Andy Dalton supposedly said that he just refers to the receiver units as two groups because it's hard to differentiate starters from non-starters. I say, when is T-Mac going to take the next step? That is your clear wide receiver one, week in, week out. That is what you need to expect because that's what all the top 10 picks, what comes from them, at least ideally, is they take the next step week in, week out. And growth is precipitous and quick. You're not sitting there waiting 9 years for him to develop. You're not going in off season. Jonathan Mingo, he's going to get 1,000 yards. Terrace Marshall, he's going to be a 900-yard receiver. Just waiting and waiting and waiting. No, it is instant. So waiting for that on T-Mac. We're going to come back to with more tomorrow. Stay tuned to The Tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Who do you like, Jalen Coker or Xavier Legette? Let me know. I'm rooting for Legette. I am. We can't have another bust wide receiver on this team. This is The Tone.